What's the smallest amount of money that could completely change your life? Not enough to quit your job. Not enough to buy a house. Not enough to retire. Just enough that you stop worrying every time your phone rings. For years, I thought I knew what that number was. Mine was $100,000. I was convinced that once I reached it, everything would finally click into place. I'd stop stressing about money. I'd feel secure. I'd finally feel rich. I never made it to $100,000. Instead, one random Tuesday, I opened my banking app and saw something I'd never seen before. $10,031. 5 digits. For the first time in my life. Nothing else had changed. I still lived in the same tiny apartment. I still drove the same old Civic that had been making a suspicious noise for months. I still had the same job. If you'd looked at my life that day, you would have seen absolutely nothing different. But something had changed. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. Not happy, not successful, just not afraid. That one moment taught me more about money than every raise I've ever gotten since, because it made me realize I've been chasing the wrong number all along. If you're into the psychology behind money, wealth, and the financial decisions that shape our lives, consider subscribing. I'm Jake, and I've spent way too much time making money mistakes, so you don't have to. So why did $10,000 change my life when $100,000 was supposed to? Because it made me realize I'd been chasing the wrong number all along. For the longest time, I thought money solved financial problems. Now, I think it solves emotional ones first. Here's what I mean. A few years earlier, if my transmission had gone out, I would have panicked. Not because I didn't know how to fix the car, because I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. That's what living paycheck to paycheck really feels like. It isn't buying things you can't afford. It's knowing that ordinary life can become a crisis without warning. Every weird noise your car makes gets your attention. Every unknown phone call makes you wonder if it's another bill. You aren't managing money. You're managing uncertainty. Now imagine the exact same problem, except you've got $10,000 sitting in your savings account. The transmission still fails. The bill still stings. But your first thought changes. Instead of, how am I going to survive this? You think, well, that's annoying. Same problem, completely different reaction. Looking back, I think that's the first thing money actually buys. Not luxury. Smaller reactions. And those smaller reactions quietly change everything. They change the jobs you're willing to leave, the opportunities you're willing to take, the conversations you're finally willing to have. Because panic is expensive. Not because it drains your bank account, because it starts making decisions for you. I stayed in jobs longer than I should have because I couldn't afford uncertainty. I said yes to things I wanted to say no to because I needed the paycheck more than I needed my sanity. Nobody sends you a bill for that, but you pay for it anyway. That's why I don't think my first $10,000 changed my finances. I think it changed my relationship with fear. And that's exactly why what happened next surprised me. If $10,000 felt this life-changing, why didn't $100,000 feel 10 times better? It should have. Instead, it didn't. I've noticed something strange about raises. The day you get one, it feels huge. You start doing the math in your head. Maybe you'll save more. Maybe you'll finally take that trip. Maybe you'll upgrade your apartment. Then a few months pass, and without even noticing, your new paycheck becomes just your paycheck. The excitement disappears. Not because you became ungrateful, because your brain quietly updated its definition of normal. The same thing happened with my savings account. The first week, I opened the app just to look at it. The first month, I still couldn't believe it was real. A few months later, I caught myself thinking, it really should be higher by now. That's when I realized the real problem wasn't my bank account. It was my expectations. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. I call it the moving finish line. Because every time you think you've finally arrived, your brain quietly moves enough a little farther away. And if you don't notice that's happening, you can spend your entire life feeling like you're almost there. That's when I stopped asking myself, how much money do I need? And started asking a much better question. What problem am I actually trying to solve? Because every financial milestone solves a different problem. Your first $1,000 proves you can save. Your first $10,000 proves you can survive. $100,000 doesn't just make you safer. It gives you options. Options to leave the job that's draining you. Options to wait for the right opportunity instead of taking the first one. Options to walk away from people, situations, and decisions you would have tolerated before. When I was younger, I thought wealth meant buying whatever you wanted. The older I get, the more I think wealth is the ability to say no. No, I'm not staying here because I'm scared. No, I don't need to buy this just because everyone else has one. No, I'm not making this decision from a place of panic. I don't think money is at its most powerful when it lets you spend more. I think it's at its most powerful when it stops fear from making your decisions for you. And the funny thing is, I didn't fully understand that until a few months after seeing $10,000 in my account. I was leaving the grocery store one Saturday morning. Nothing special, just groceries. I paid, loaded the bags into the Civic, started driving home. About halfway there, something hit me. I hadn't checked my bank account before walking into the store. I hadn't done the mental math. I hadn't wondered if I should put something back. For years, that had been automatic. Not because I was irresponsible, because I didn't have any room for error. Every purchase carried a little bit of tension. That day, it didn't. And it was such a small change, I almost missed it. But looking back, I think that was the moment I actually started feeling wealthy. Not because I had a lot of money, because money had quietly stopped occupying every corner of my mind. Maybe that's what being rich actually feels like. Not owning everything, not impressing everyone, just having enough breathing room that an ordinary Tuesday finally feels ordinary again. So what's the number that makes you feel rich? I don't think it's the number that impresses other people. I think it's the number that lets you stop asking, what if something goes wrong? Because the day that question disappears, your relationship with money changes. And once that happens, you stop chasing a number. You start building a life. Maybe that's the real goal. Not becoming rich, becoming free enough that money no longer gets the final say. And if that's true, the number that changes your life is probably a lot smaller than the one you've been chasing.